Welcome to CRIME-ALYZE, where I analyze crimes from a psychological and forensic perspective. Today I will analyze the case of Elizabeth Marie Noel Barraza. She was born on June 26, 1989, in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. For her higher education, Elizabeth attended Sam Houston State University, which is located in Huntsville, Texas, where Elizabeth graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology in 2012. Elizabeth Barraza was a vibrant 29-year-old woman living a life filled with purpose, joy, and deep connections. She was known for her bright smile and generous spirit. Liz was a dedicated member of the 501st Legion Charity Group, which is a volunteer organization where Star Wars enthusiasts craft movie accurate costumes to visit and bring joy to children in hospitals. It was a passion which Elizabeth shared with her husband, Sergio Barraza, whom she had met during her college years at Sam Houston State University. By January of 2019, the young couple was living in a welcoming neighborhood in Tomball, Texas, and excitedly preparing to celebrate their 5th wedding anniversary with a dream trip to Universal Studios in Orlando. So they had been married for 5 years. To pull together some extra spending money for their vacation souvenirs, Liz made a spontaneous decision on the evening of Thursday, January 24, 2019. By the way, Elizabeth or Liz had a degree in psychology, a bachelor's degree. Liz decided she would host a garage sale the very next morning, so on that Friday, in her driveway, and that was January 25th of 2019. Elizabeth went out and set up a few physical signs around the neighborhood to direct local traffic. Allegedly, she went out to set up these traffic signs in the morning. But critically, she never posted about the sale on social media, as far as we know. Because of this, only someone in the immediate vicinity or someone monitoring her very closely would have known that she planned to be outside at the crack of dawn the following morning on that Friday. So there have been different statements by Sergio Barraza. At one point, Sergio stated that him and Liz had placed signs outside on Thursday evening, and then in another statement, Sergio had said that no, that was not the case. They had him and Elizabeth had only put out the garage sale signs that Friday morning. Friday, January 25th, started like any other routine morning. Liz took the day off from her job as a data reporter to manage the sale. So she was using this Friday as a casual Friday. At 6:08 a.m., she made a quick run to the nearby Starbucks to buy coffee, and she returned a few minutes later home, and while coming home, she playfully made a face into the Ring doorbell camera, which was attached to their house next to the front entrance, next to the front door. At 6:48 a.m., at 6:48 that morning, her husband Sergio said goodbye to her, and Sergio left the house for his job. Unbeknownst to either of them, a danger was already waiting. Neighboring security footage would later reveal that a dark-colored late-model Nissan Frontier Pro 4X crew cab pickup truck had been actively stalking and scouting the neighborhood since 2 a.m. that morning. So there is security camera footage from another residence in that neighborhood where this black truck is driving around that neighborhood at about 2 o'clock in the morning, which was about 5 hours before the crime. So you wonder if the person who was driving this black truck, he was driving around the neighborhood at 2 a.m., scouting the neighborhood, looking at possibilities how he can get into the neighborhood, looking at escape routes, how he can get out of the neighborhood after he committed this crime. So if he's driving around the neighborhood at 2 in the morning, he's going to be back home maybe at 3 o'clock in the morning. Is he going to get another 3 hours of sleep, or is he just going to stay up these 3 hours? The crime was committed at around 7 o'clock in the morning on that Friday, or a few minutes before 7 o'clock. And the security footage of the neighboring houses, which had their cameras directed in the way into the direction of the driveway of Liz, that security footage shows that the person who committed the crime, the shooter, he was also the driver of that black truck, but there was another person sitting and waiting in the truck in the passenger seat. So it was actually two people who were committing this crime. There was another person sitting in the black truck, which was idling on the side of the road for the few minutes that the other person committed this crime. Just 4 minutes later, at 6:52 in the morning, the Nissan Frontier pulled up and parked just a short distance from the Barraza driveway. A disguised figure stepped out of the vehicle. The shooter was wearing what appeared to be a dress and a long robe or a cloak, along with a wig, completely obscuring the physical identity and leaving investigators fiercely debating the suspect's gender. The individual walked directly up to the driveway towards Liz, who was busy setting out items. Audio captured from a neighbor's surveillance camera recorded a chillingly brief 3-second exchange of words between Liz and the stranger. So, John Lorden of Lorden Arts on YouTube, he has put together a short video with the security footage, which was captured by the surveillance cameras of neighbors. And John Lorden also synced that video footage with the audio. So this Nissan pickup truck stopped near the driveway of Liz Barraza's house, and a person, we don't know if it's a man or a woman, he seemed to be wearing some kind of white robe and maybe boots, walked up into the driveway, and he walked straight up to Liz, and he said a few things to Liz, but the audio is not clear, so we're not really sure what he said. Of course, it would be very, very important. So that's the number one thing. It would be very, very important for audio forensic experts to really spend another month trying to dissect that audio footage, because then we would know what exactly was said there. That could also give us clues as to why Elizabeth or Liz was murdered. So that's one thing that the police could have done. I know they have had people try to improve the audio quality of those audio recordings, but do it again. That's what I can tell the police. Do it again until you got it right, until you got something clear that we can listen to, so that we know what was being said there. So that's the number one thing, that audio footage that can give us leads. As I said, various people, Aaron Stoner, he has dissected this audio footage on YouTube in an excellent way, but even he was not able to get a clear version of the audio footage to filter out any noise and to try to find ways to clean out that audio footage. So big thank you to Aaron Stoner for everything that he's done in this case. He's on YouTube, and the second thing is the clothes that this shooter was wearing. So this is also very suspicious, the clothing he was wearing, which seemed to be some kind of clothing that was intentionally made to look like Star Wars clothing. So the shooter seemed to be wearing a wig with white or blonde shoulder-length female hair. He seemed to be wearing a white robe. He seemed to be wearing knee-high boots. And that could have, looked like one of the costumes out of a Star Wars film. So if this person runs up to Liz in that outfit. Liz being one of the people who is actively engaged in the Star Wars scene. She's familiar with these costumes. So when somebody like that comes up to her, she thinks he's got something to do with her Star Wars scene, maybe. So that's one thing to consider. Now that the shooter already drove around the neighborhood at 2 in the morning, shows us that this whole murder was not random, but that was meticulously planned. And somebody who's going to commit a murder like that is not going to just scout the neighborhood one time 5 hours before the crime. This is a very serious crime. So when he drove through the neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning, that was not the first time that he was scouting this area. That was the last time before the crime that he was scouting the area. Before that, he probably scouted the area many times, because he cannot commit a crime like that by just driving around the neighborhood once at 5 hours before the crime. So probably the surveillance footage of the neighboring houses was also scanned for the days and weeks prior to that crime, but probably the days and weeks prior to the crime, he probably drove past the house, the residence of Liz, in a different vehicle. Maybe that's why there was no additional surveillance footage found on surveillance cameras of the neighbors for the days and weeks prior to that, besides the footage that I already told you about. Besides the footage 5 hours prior to that crime. So we have a crime which is not random, because he was scouting, and let's assume it's a he, because he was scouting the area 5 hours before the crime. And let me say it one more time, that was not the first time he was scouting the area. That was the last time before the crime he was scouting the area. He probably scouted the area many times in the days prior to that. So Sergio said that the evening before, no signs were posted anywhere by him or Liz, garage sale signs or yard sale signs, indicating that there's going to be a yard sale or garage sale that Friday morning and that Saturday. So the only people who could have known about the garage sale, according to Sergio, and according to my logic, would then be that those are the parents of Sergio and Liz. They might have known about it, and a few neighbors might have known about it, but the public at large did not know about this yard sale. But we do have a shooter who knew about this yard sale. So where from did this shooter know that there's going to be a yard sale? He must have known that there's going to be a yard sale because he was scouting the area 5 hours in advance, and he carried a revolver, and he was also dressed up in a costume. So the way he dressed up, that's not the usual way people dress up in Texas. Yes, it was winter time. Yes, it was January. So yes, he could have worn a coat, but to wear a wig with long white hair and a white robe and these nearly knee-high boots, that kind of indicates that it was a costume. And when you see the surveillance footage of the actual shooting, when he's running away from Liz, when he's running out of the driveway after he has shot Liz, then you can kind of see that there's a wig moving on his head, a wig with long white hair. So it was not a random shooting. Only very few people knew that there's going to be a yard sale. Where from did this shooter know that there's going to be a yard sale? Because he didn't drive around the neighborhood at 2 a.m. just for fun, and to then come back at about 6:55 in the morning with a revolver and in a costume to walk up to Liz's door to ring her doorbell and to shoot her when she opens the door. I don't think that was the plan. I think he knew that there was a yard sale, but let's assume that he didn't know that there was a yard sale, but that he had a plan to murder Elizabeth. So then he would have had to drive up to her driveway at 6:55 that Friday morning. He would have had to go up to her doorbell, ring the doorbell. She opens the door, and he fires the shots at her right then and there. So that would have been what he had to do if there was no yard sale. But I don't think that his plan was to walk up to her door and to ring the doorbell. I think he knew that there was a yard sale. So very few people knew that there was going to be a yard sale. What are the chances that the parents of Sergio and the parents of Liz know somebody and that they tell them that there's going to be a yard sale tomorrow, and that one of these people that Liz's parents or Sergio's parents give that information to is the shooter? The chances of that are 0.0001%. So that kind of leads me to believe that this whole thing is kind of like an inside job. It kind of has to be an inside job because hardly anybody knew that there's going to be a yard sale. So if Liz had enemies, then her enemies would have had to get the information that there's a yard sale. And so again, the chances that the parents of Sergio or Liz or a few friends of Sergio and Liz who were informed by Liz and Sergio that there's going to be a yard sale the next day. The chances that these people are in touch with enemies of Liz and Sergio are close to zero. Those chances are 0.00001%. The next fact to consider is that the leading detective in this case has said that every person who was in the Star Wars group, they're called the 501st Legion charity group. Let me refer to them as the Star Wars group. So the lead detective in this case stated that every person who was in that Star Wars group was interviewed by police. Every person in that group was questioned by police, whether or not they had any kinds of problems with Elizabeth or with Sergio, and whether or not they knew of anybody who had any kind of problem with Elizabeth or Sergio. And the result of those interviews was that no, nobody had any problem with Elizabeth or Sergio, and nobody in that group knew of any kind of problems that anybody had with Elizabeth or Sergio. So, it could be that somebody in that Star Wars group was holding a silent grudge against Sergio or Elizabeth, a silent grudge for something, or that one of the neighbors of Elizabeth or somebody at work from Elizabeth silently was holding a grudge against Elizabeth because Elizabeth had cut somebody off in traffic and that person was angry, and then as a result that person planned to kill Elizabeth. So there are crazy people out there like that who would do something like that, but the police, in this case the lead detective, could not find any kind of evidence that a person like that exists. So this was a planned murder. Maybe it was a murder for hire. And Elizabeth was shot 4 times by the killer. The killer had a lot of rage. The killer walked up to Elizabeth. He said a few words, and then he shot her point blank into the chest, into her body, full bullets. The first bullet even went through her body and went into the wall of their house. But Elizabeth did not die on the spot, so the shooter is not necessarily 100% professional. He probably is a semi-professional, because if he would have been 100% professional, he would have maybe even used 6 or 8 bullets just to make sure that Elizabeth really would expire right then and there, but she lived till the next day, even though he shot her 4 times. So he was probably a semi-professional. Now, the other very suspicious fact here in this case is that the killer approached the driveway of Liz exactly 1 or 2 minutes after Sergio had left that house. Okay, so what does that tell us? That tells us that the murderer also had knowledge that Liz is married and that the killer has to wait until Sergio has left the house. So when we put things together, that means that the killer must have known the daily routine of Sergio and Elizabeth, and the killer must have known that daily routine either from personal observations or through some other kinds of information, maybe insider information from one of the people on the inside in this case. Now, what Sergio said after this crime happened was a little strange. The way Sergio behaved was a little strange. It does show a certain, suspicious behavior by Sergio. Sergio and his mother didn't rush to the hospital right away to visit Liz, but they only went to the hospital that Friday afternoon, and the shooting had taken place at around 7 in the morning. And the reasons that Sergio gave why he didn't go to the hospital sooner were that, well, he thought Elizabeth wasn't injured that heavily because he had heard of other people who had been shot before, and that usually wasn't that serious. And also, he had to find somebody who would look after his little dog. And that's why he couldn't drive to the hospital sooner. So these excuses are very flimsy. But that doesn't mean that Sergio is responsible for this crime. The responses that Sergio gave could just mean that that's just the way that he responds to things when he's under pressure. It doesn't mean he's a criminal. It just means that he responds in a way which is a little weird. So that's not a reason for the police to arrest Sergio as the person who paid for this murder. So Sergio is innocent until proven guilty. The police doesn't have enough evidence to arrest Sergio. The police doesn't have enough evidence to convict Sergio. The circumstances of this entire crime are strange. And there's just not a lot of people that the killer could have gotten the information from. That there is a yard sale, number one. Number two, at what time is Sergio going to leave the house? Um, those are the two major points that hardly anybody knew. So where did the shooter get that information from? That's one thing to really consider. So the shooter could have only gotten that information from an insider, either from Sergio or from one of the other people who were connected, Sergio's parents, um, or somebody. But I'm not accusing anybody here. I'm just theorizing. So then we've got the entire crime on camera. The weird thing is, yes, we've got the entire crime on camera. And the weird and incredible thing is that there's no surveillance footage which shows the license plate of this black truck. Okay, so there is plenty of footage of the truck, but there's no footage that shows the truck from the rear with the license plate. So that's just very unfortunate that people only have the surveillance cameras mounted in a way which only shows things moving by from the side. So cars are only shown from the side. No surveillance cameras are set up which show the rear or the front of cars. Only the sides are being shown. So there's no license plates. If there were surveillance footage which would also show the rear of the truck, then we might have a license plate. Maybe the shooter left his real license plate on there, or maybe he put a stolen or fake license plate on the truck. We don't know that. The other thing next in line is the police should have pulled all security footage which is mounted to traffic lights in the area, because when the shooter drove away, he probably had to pull onto one of the main roads, and usually the main roads also have surveillance cameras mounted at the top of traffic lights. But obviously the police didn't find that either. That brings us to actually the number one biggest clue, which I will tell you now. And that is that the police really had it easy in this case, but they didn't use it, and I don't know why they didn't use it. They really had it easy because there's surveillance footage that shows what kind of truck it is, what model it is. It's a 2012 or 2013 to 2019 Nissan Frontier truck with 4 doors, dual cab, in black color. Okay, black color, or well, the security surveillance cameras are black and white, so it could also be. It seems to be black color. It could also be dark brown or dark purple. It could also be maybe that kind of a color. A very dark purple maybe, but it seems to be a dark color. It seems to be a black Nissan Frontier. So what I don't understand is, why did the police not compile a list from the Department of Motor Vehicles, a list of all Nissan Frontier trucks in color black in that area and in a radius of first 10 miles, go to the owners of all of those people, interview the owners of all of those black trucks, ask them where were they that morning at 7 o'clock in the morning. Where were they? Just go and ask all of the owners of these trucks. How many black Nissan pickup trucks can there be in that area? Maybe 30, 40, 50 black Nissan trucks. Go to all the owners, ask them where they were that morning. Do they have an alibi? If all of these people have an alibi, then the police should have extended the radius. Look for all trucks. Go to the owners of all trucks in a radius of 50 miles or 100 miles or all over Texas or a radius of 200 miles. That's the number one way to find the killer. Track down the owners. All of the owners are registered. All of these trucks are registered. Track down the owner of all these trucks. Send officers to them and question them. Where were they at that morning, at that time? That's actually the best way to find the killer, because all of these black trucks are registered with the Department of Motor Vehicles. It's not like this truck is registered in Mexico. No, it's not. It's a fairly new truck. And it's not like that the normal color of this truck is green, and that for this crime he painted this truck in black. I don't think he did that. I don't think he went through all that kind of work to just repaint that truck for this crime. I think the truck was black and still is black. But even if it's not, get a list of all the owners of these black trucks. Send officers to all of these owners, talk to all these owners, get an alibi from all of these owners, find out which of these owners does not have an alibi for that morning, 7 a.m. And if you can't find them like that, also check the neighboring states, Louisiana, New Mexico, Arizona. Also check those, Department of Motor Vehicles for that kind of truck. And if you cannot track down a black truck with an owner who doesn't have an alibi for 7 o'clock in the morning on that Friday, then also get a list of all trucks in other colors. So in case he did have a blue truck and for the crime he repainted it in color black, then check out all trucks. Check out the owners of all trucks in that area of Texas to see who are the owners and which owner has an alibi, which owner doesn't have an alibi. I think that is the number one clue, because the lead detective already covered everything else. He interviewed all the Star Wars people and there was nothing. He interviewed the neighbors, there was nothing. Maybe you should interview the neighbors a little more, but there was nothing. He did not find that Liz and Sergio have enemies. They have no known enemies. Nobody has any problem with them. Nobody's angry at them, except this person who killed Liz. That person is very angry. He killed Liz out of rage, out of a lot of rage. He had a lot of anger. And if it would have been a murder for hire, let's say if Sergio hired somebody to kill Liz, then maybe the killer who shot at Liz, maybe that killer would have been a little more calm. Maybe, maybe he wouldn't have, yeah, maybe he would have been a little more calm. The other suspicious thing is that the killer wore an outfit which kind of fits into the Star Wars scene. So it must have been a killer who knew that Liz is active in the Star Wars scene. I don't think it's a coincidence that he dressed up kind of similar to a Star Wars costume. It wasn't exactly a Star Wars costume, but it does go into that direction. So there's not a lot of killers that I know of from my experience who would dress up like that. So theoretically, if Sergio put out a murder for hire, then Sergio could have instructed the killer to wear a Star Wars outfit in order to lead the police into the wrong direction, in order to make the police believe that the murder is maybe Star Wars related. So those are all things to consider. I think currently the main task for the police would be to again go through all owners who owned a black Nissan truck in that area. First, get a list of all owners of that Nissan truck in a radius of 10 miles, then in a radius of 20 miles, then in a radius of 30 miles, then in a radius of 50 miles. Go through all of these owners. Now, it's 7 years already after this crime, so that's a long time. The police should have done that, what I just said. They should have done that in 2019 and not 7 years later. So now it's going to be harder to find somebody who's responsible for this murder, and to go to all the owners of these trucks. So because some of these trucks might not exist anymore, they might already been at a scrapyard. Some of these trucks might still be active, but they might have different owners. But that's the number one task that they should have done, is to get a list of all trucks in that area and to send officers to all the owners of these trucks and to ask them where they were that morning at 7 in the morning. That's the number one job the police should have done. And I'm not too happy that the police didn't do that job right. They should have done that job right, because what's the point of us having this surveillance footage of the truck, but the police is not able to really use that footage to find the murderer? That's very depressing. That's very discouraging. And we don't have access to obviously to the information of the Department of Motor Vehicles. So we cannot just obtain the list of the owners of all Nissan trucks in that area or in Texas, um, and to visit them and to talk to them. We can't do that. We're not allowed to do that, and we don't have access to all that information. We don't have access to the files of the Department of Motor Vehicles in Texas. So that's clearly the job of the police department in Texas to do that. So, what's the likelihood that somebody is holding a grudge against Elizabeth? Somebody's angry against Elizabeth for something minor, maybe, because everybody was questioned and everybody's saying Sergio and Elizabeth don't have problems with anybody. Nobody's angry at Sergio and Elizabeth, except maybe there's a few people in that Star Wars group who are jealous at Elizabeth and at Sergio, because Sergio and Elizabeth were popular in that group and things like that. But that's not a reason for somebody to kill Elizabeth. If it's a crazy person can find any kind of reason to kill somebody. And a killer who dresses up, who's a killer who is a male and who dresses up with a female wig with long blonde hair and with a long cloak with a long white coat, yeah, he could be crazy. And the way he walked up to her and he shot her, and the way he ran back to his car, he drove away and he turned around and he drove one more time past his house, past Elizabeth's house. He drove one more time past her house, either to make sure she's dead or because he heard sirens coming in the other direction. But I think he drove past one more time and then he turned around again and drove back the way he came from. So we don't really know why he drove back. Did he want to check whether or not she's really deceased, or did he drive back for some other reason? But if he's a professional killer, then he should have known that he shot her 4 times and that she probably is deceased. But I think he's only a semi-professional killer, because if he shoots her from point blank range, then he's really got to make sure that she's gonna be deceased really right then and there within a very short time. But that didn't happen. She was deceased only the next day. So he didn't shoot her good enough. I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry to say it that way. So he's a semi-professional killer. Maybe he was holding a grudge against Elizabeth for something else or for something we don't know about, but the police have checked everything. They've checked everything. That's what the lead detective told us, and they just cannot find any reason why somebody wanted to kill Elizabeth. But as we know from serial killers and from other killers, these people kill without logic. They even kill just for fun or just for any kind of reason. But if this was a random killing, then he wouldn't have driven around the neighborhood in the morning at 2 a.m. If it was a random killing, then he could have killed somebody else. Most likely. That is my opinion. So that kind of leaves us really to believe that the killer received the information that there was a yard sale that morning. He received it from an insider. He received that information from an insider, and he's not gonna just receive the information from an insider, but he's also gonna receive instructions what to do from an insider. He's gonna receive instructions to kill Elizabeth from an insider. So that would be one way to look at it. And on Sergio's side, there was a lot of money involved. Elizabeth had $250,000 life insurance, and in case she's murdered, the insurance would pay another $250,000, so $500,000 in life insurance. That's what Sergio would have received. Sergio later said that Sergio didn't know about that, or he didn't know that the life insurance was that high, and he doesn't really want the life insurance payout and all of that. Yeah, that's all good. So we're not accusing Sergio of anything. Sergio is innocent until proven guilty. The whole thing looks suspicious towards Sergio, but Sergio, the way he talks, the way he responded, might be just the way he is. Under pressure, a little clumsy maybe. So that's not a crime. It's not a crime to be clumsy in that case. So to conclude, I would say that the leading detective could have done a whole lot more. What he should have done is what I stated earlier, which is that really every truck, every Nissan truck of that model and of those model years 2012 or 2013 to 2019 should have been checked. Every owner of one of those trucks should have been interviewed and talked to. And I think looking back, that was not done properly. So to really look at every Nissan Frontier Pro 4X crew cab pickup truck, it's got 4 doors in color black, or get a list of all colors, get a list of all owners, of all license plates, of all addresses with owners of that kind of truck in Texas, in Louisiana, and in the neighboring states, and go and interview all of these, and you're going to find the murderer. You're going to find the murderer. If you want to find the murderer, then that's what the police should do. I encourage the police in Texas to do that. Even now, 7 years later, that is what the police in Texas should do right now in this case. Even if it's 7 years later, even if some of these trucks don't exist anymore, even if some of these trucks are not on the road anymore, even if some of these trucks have been sold, that is what the police should do right now. Get a list of all the owners, get a list of all the owners who owned those trucks in 2009. Talk to all of these people, find out where they were on that morning, and see what you can achieve with that. I think that's a clear way to find the murderer in this case, because there's surveillance footage of this black Nissan Frontier Pro 4X truck. We know what truck it is. Thank you.